Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good afternoon, everyone. Today's topic is very timely. You probably heard in the news the new injury pattern with electronic cigarettes, and this is what we're going to be talking about today. Of course, for a long time we've been combating the bad effects of regular cigarette smoking. We've been trying to help people quit smoking, and the FDA had approved several products, whether it's gum, nicotine replacement, patches, varenicline, bupropion. And then this new thing came out. It came out as hopefully a replacement for combustion cigarettes. It didn't prove to be a good replacement because many people who were not actually smoking picked up the e-cigarettes because it was a cool thing to do. The simple diagram of an electronic cigarette is basically a battery and then a heater coil. And there's a wick that contains an active substance, and it is immersed in the vaping liquid, which is mostly plant oil or glycerol. And then the whole thing is heated up, and there's an aerosol that is inhaled from the mouthpiece. At this point, it will be better. So what's in that electronic cigarette? This is what is thought to be the inner part. These are the solvents, mostly oil from plants like glycerol, propylene glycol, and then flavors. There's more than 7,000 flavors now in the market, so it's very hard to keep track. And these are the active substances. Some contain nicotine and others contain the cannabinoids, THC and CBD. The form of electronic cigarettes emerged over the years, and now we have a fourth generation that looks like a USB stick. So cool looking, very popular among young people, obviously. And these are cartridges or pods that are commercially available, made by the companies. But some other people become creative and they add their own things, probably homemade or stuff they buy on the street, illicit drugs. When they drip, liquid is called dripping. When they add this wax-like material, mostly containing THC, it's called dabbing. So dripping and dabbing are both forms of vaping. For a long time, we knew that electronic cigarettes had substances of concern, including ethylene glycol, formaldehyde, acetaldehyde. There has been a lot of research looking into electronic cigarettes, and we knew at that time that there is some sort of immune response, including release of interleukins, cytokines, apoptosis of epithelial cells. So it's already damage recorded, but continued to be popular, especially among the young people, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it gives them the same experience as smoking a cigarette. Number two, nicotine actually reaches a peak in the serum within 5 minutes. So continue to be popular and continue to grow different brands, more than 400 different brands of electronic cigarettes, more than 7,000 flavors. And that made it very difficult for the scientific and regulatory communities to make a statement about electronic cigarettes. For a long time, nobody knew whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, because there were so many things to study. And it continued to grow in the population in the US from 1.8 in 2010 to almost 13% of the adult population were smoking electronic cigarettes. And that's more than 7-fold increase within a few years. And no wonder, it also reached minors between ages 12 and 17. Because of the internet and the advertisements, in 2013 it was estimated that 23 million minors have been exposed to such advertisements. And it is a very lucrative business, as you know. $1.5 billion in the US alone, and it continues to grow 24% every year. That's a lot of money. And worldwide, $10 billion business and growing. So the question is, well, these are FDA-approved products, and this is the electronic cigarette that was supposed to help people quit smoking. And the question is, did it really help people smoke? In a study in New Zealand, recruited more than 600 smokers, followed them for 6 months. And the estimated rate of abstinence from combustion cigarettes was very close, 4%, 5%, 7%. So the conclusion of the study was that e-cigarettes are not really helpful. And then there was another study in the UK, recruited more people, almost 900, followed them for a whole year. And they documented a drop, about 50% drop, in the use of regular cigarettes. The problem is, people were giving up one habit and picking up another form of addiction to electronic cigarettes. So electronic cigarettes continued to be used until the summer of 2019, and we developed what's called EVALI, or electronic vaping acute lung injury. This is actually a very sad case. This is the child from Illinois. There was 5 cases reported from Wisconsin, first of all, in mid-July. And then 2 weeks later, this kid from Illinois almost died from vaping. I think I have, his story was published in CNN, and I have a little video that I hope to be able to play for you. Volume. Sound. A very sad story, Taban, interviewing the child himself and interviewing his family as well. His mother came out very strongly and said, "This almost killed my son, and I'm not going to keep silent." Like, there's no sound, it's okay. He was vaping for 2 years. Taban, he never smoked before, by the way. And then he was buying THC products from the street, and then adding them to his electronic cigarettes. This man is asking him, now in retrospect, whether you think this is dumb. Well, of course, but yeah, I was addicted, so I didn't think about it that way. All right. Can we advance? So this is the sequence of events, what really happened. Mid-July, cases in Wisconsin. And then the beautiful thing is the CDC was alerted within 2 weeks. CDC got involved with the Department of Health in both Illinois and Wisconsin and issued alerts and had an emergency center set up. And then collaboration between the FDA and the CDC. They looked back to the summer of 2019 and they did realize there was a surge of unexplained acute respiratory illnesses among young males in that period. And then reports started coming from different states. Most of them contained THC products. Now, the dilemma is, how do you define a case? And the difficulty arises from the presentation. How do these people present? They present with symptoms very similar to pneumonia. They have some respiratory symptoms, some chest pain, cough, and they have some GI symptoms, nausea, diarrhea, and they have some fever and chills. So how is that different from pneumonia? Chest x-ray looks like this could be community-acquired pneumonia, eosinophilic pneumonia, HP, who knows? So there's nothing specific about the presentation that would say, this is EVALI, I have to report it. Okay, so we got CAT scans, and we found that there's ground glass appearance, mostly involving both lungs, some consolidation at the bases as well. Something to notice also, there's some subpleural sparing. But is that characteristic of EVALI? Of course not. This could look like so many other diseases. This could be diffuse alveolar hemorrhage, this could be infectious. So between all these different patterns, we couldn't really decide of a specific pattern pathognomonic to EVALI. So we sorted out laboratory tests. Is there a lab test that can tell me, yes, this is EVALI? Of course not. The lab is not helpful. But you would run all the tests to rule out all other possibilities before you make a diagnosis of EVALI. Well, let's go one step further. Let's obtain BAL and biopsies. We looked at the BAL, and this is something I'm going to come back to, which is surprisingly, most of the cases, especially in the CDC laboratory, they analyzed BAL from 28 different cases with ETALI. All of them had this appearance. Macrophages filled with fat. So the word on the street was, well, this is lipoid pneumonia then. And that was popular for maybe like a month or so, but then it died out. So the BAL was also helpful in distinguishing that from acute eosinophilic pneumonia, because eosinophilia was not the characteristic of ETALI. Now let's go further. So physical, presentation, history, physical exam, laboratory test, BAL, we still have not made criteria so clear to make a diagnosis. So we're going for a biopsy. They biopsied 8 patients from 5 different institutions, 7 of them transbronchial biopsies, 1 surgical biopsy. All infectious workup was negative. And they all had the classic presentation and the classic chest X-ray and CT appearance. What do they find? 4 of them consistently had some form of progressive organizing pneumonia. This is a pattern of diffuse alveolar hemorrhage, as you can see, hyaline membrane depositions, and this is organization around the airways. One case, after vaping for 1 month, presented with diffuse alveolar hemorrhage. Classic. Hemoptysis on presentation, hemorrhagic BAL, classic biopsy, and appearance on CT. So that's one form of acute lung injury from vaping. A second one presented with HP-like syndrome. Classic findings on the CAT scan, nodular, ground glass, mosaic appearance, eosinophilic BAL, and the surprising thing is they respond promptly to steroids, just like HP would do. So that's another pattern. A third pattern was RBILD, respiratory bronchiolitis with the classic plugging in the airways with macrophages, classic appearance, bronchiectatic changes, nodular ground glass appearance with air trapping in the periphery of the lungs. And when you stopped the vaping, the disease went away. So that made that story more confusing. Another person was reported after 6 months of vaping to develop giant cell pneumonitis. So that didn't bring us any closer to a solution. It made things more confusing. And obviously some presented with some lipoid pneumonia as well. So diagnostic criteria could not be agreed upon. And it remained a diagnosis of exclusion. And that is a very taxing process. I'll show you why. They say, according to the CDC, to confirm a case of ETALI, you have to do the following. Number 1, the patient had been dabbing or vaping for 90 days prior to presentation, which is okay, that's fine from history. They have to present with the classic findings on chest X-ray CAT scan, that is also okay, but this is not easy to do. You have to rule out all kinds of infections, respiratory, samples, blood cultures, BAL, looking for viruses, looking for TB, looking for bacteria, all that has to be ruled out. Number 2, you also have to rule out neoplastic diseases, rheumatologic diseases, cardiac diseases, and you tell me that doesn't come cheap. So to confirm a case, you really have to spend a lot of money. So the next best thing is probable case, where the classic presentation, history and findings on CT, but either there is some sort of infection, but you don't believe the infection is responsible for the lung injury, or you have not completed the infectious rule-out process. So that's a probable case. And you still have to rule out other rheumatologic and cardiac and neoplastic diseases. As of mid-October, there was 1,479 cases reported, usually among young males. 70% of the males under the age of 35. The death toll was 33 confirmed death cases at that time. The latest I checked was November 20th, and the toll had risen to 47 deaths from ETALI. We'll go back to this macro. This is the only thing that we found that is so consistent among all patients, which is the lipid-laden macrophages. So someone went into the lab to do some basic science and figure out what's going on with these macrophages. I mean, the answer to the question is there. So they exposed these mice to nicotine vapor, vagal vapor, and also exposed them to the ENDS. ENDS are the electronic nicotine delivery systems. Surprisingly, they found that only the mice that were exposed to ENDS, electronic nicotine delivery systems, developed these lipid-laden macrophages. Those who got exposed to smoke and nicotine and vagal vapor did not develop anything. So that has something to do with this electronic nicotine delivery system. So when they looked, there's a lot of lipid here, so the thinking was, okay, there's something in the e-cigarette that is lipoid. The plant oil that's in there has to be responsible, and that has to be a form of lipoid pneumonia. Until they went, electron microscopy confirmed the presence of globules of fat within the macrophages, and then they went and measured glycerol inside the macrophages. And to their surprise, they found that the mice that were just breathing regular air had more glycerol than the mice that were exposed to ENDS, electronic nicotine delivery system. So said that doesn't make sense. So it is not the glycerol that is causing this macrophages to accumulate lipids. With further analysis, they find out spectrometry that the type of lipids that is accumulating is consistent with surfactant lipids. So that is endogenous lipids, not exogenous. So something hurt that surfactant homeostasis, and they proposed this module here, that these are the macrophages, they have those receptors, and they respond by releasing cytokines. And that response is impaired in people who are exposed to ENDS. And also, this leads to accumulation of fat within the macrophages and within the alveolar type 2 cells. And the whole disruption of the surfactant homeostasis leads to this abnormal accumulation and injury to the macrophages. So that is the proposed model. So what is the treatment? How do you treat this? Number one, you have to stop the vaping, of course. Treatment is mostly supportive. Oxygen. If they get worse, intubation. If they get really worse, ECMO. And that happened in just one case. Antibiotics, yes, most of the time you're going to be able to differentiate between infection and non-infectious. So empiric antibiotics are okay if you're suspecting infection. Steroids, recommendation is not to use it routinely because effectiveness has not been established. But if you're desperate and the patient is getting worse, use it. If the patient is still okay, withhold. Those who've been given treatment with steroids did show a lot of improvement. Out of 92%, 65% of them improved, and I'll show you some pictures. Those who were very sick with extensive disease, within a couple of months of treatment, complete clearance. This is another patient who had extensive consolidation and ground glass, and within 10 weeks of steroid treatment, completely cured. Now, the CDC came up with this new product, vitamin E acetate, which is used in a lot of products, GI products and skin products, and people use it as a thickening agent for the THC products. They found that this was found also in all samples of the BAL taken from patients with Valley. So they didn't decide that this is the cause of the injury, but they say this is a substance of concern, and there's ongoing research now to find out what is next. So all the samples that went to the CDC, there was vitamin E acetate in all of them. Recommendations from the CDC. Number one, complete cessation of all types of vaping, especially those that have THC. Especially if the patient is a pregnant woman. And for those who will continue to use vaping, they should only use the commercially prepared products and not buy stuff off the street. That's the recommendation. This is the website to report cases to the CDC if you have a suspicion for a case of EVALI. They also issued a statement on how to prepare samples and how to submit to the CDC. So, in summary, we are dealing with a new disease that is not well understood. There are so many different forms of pathological injuries that is not pathognomonic to one pattern of illness. It is acute, it is severe respiratory illness, and it can lead to respiratory failure. Investigations and research are ongoing. It involves both lungs, different lung injuries, as you've seen, remains a diagnosis of exclusion. And treatment is mostly supportive. Efficacy of steroids is not certain. The advice right now is to completely avoid vaping products. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Islam, for your interesting lecture. Now we are going to...
Thanks, Dr. Islam. One point you are